I'm calling the public hearing to order. I'd like to introduce the board members. On my right, we have Ken Taylor, Bruce Colton, Walter Gunn, Heather Laporte, and to her left is Steve Crane, the town manager. First off, I want to apologize to everybody. When we set the hearing date, we didn't realize that at sundown started Rosh Hashanah, which is a high holiday for Jews, and two of us are Jewish on the board. So I apologize to anyone if that offended them.
Well, if it did, they're probably not here.
I'd like to identify the application that's the subject of the hearing. It's an application number 217014-01 by Pride Limited Partnership. The planning board will sometimes refer to Pride Limited Partnership as Pride during this hearing to make it easier. Walter, you're our clerk. I understand the legal notice has been published for this application. Could you please read that into the record?
Correct. The planning board hearing notice, which was published in the Republican on September 6th and September 13th, which is 14 days before this public hearing, as required by statute. The Long Meadow Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 20th, 2017 at 7 p.m. Long Meadow High School, 535 Bliss Road, room 815, Long Meadow, Mass. for site and design review application for Pride Stores, application 2017-01-04-1, located at 1730 Long Meadow Street. Documents associated with this application are filed with the Department of Community Development, 20 William Street, Long Meadow, Mass. and may be inspected during normal business hours. Per order of Donald Holland, Chair of the Long Meadow Planning Board.
Thank you, Walter. By Pride's application, Pride seeks to do three things, as I understand it. The first one is add a new island to the gas station located at 1730 Long Meadow Street. The extra island would, according to Pride, allow refueling on both sides. Second, rebuild a convenience store into a 2160 square foot store. And lastly, change curb cuts for vehicular circulation. In connection with Pride's application, Pride has submitted a transportation impact assessment dated October 21, 2016 for a cafe/bakery and market remodel. I'm going to explain how the hearing will be run. Pride can make a presentation. I see that Mr. Bolduc has something to show for us. And after that presentation, if Attorney Channing wants to make further comments regarding Pride's application, he's free to do so. And later, comments will be made by anyone against Pride's application or in support of Pride's application. Supporters and opponents will each have up to 10 minutes to speak. Any rebuttals by a supporter or opponent will be limited to a total of 5 minutes. If you speak, please come to the table, identify yourself for the records, and tell us your home address. Mr. Bolduc, is it you that wants to make the presentation, or is it Mr. Channing?
Mr. Channing would like to preview.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
James Channing, represent the applicant. With me is Mr. Robert Bolduc. I think what's known as a reservation of rights, I think the planning board may be familiar, but Pride at some point asserted a right to constructive approval of this application. I just have to put it on the record that that's still pending. Notwithstanding that, obviously we're here tonight before you. Hopefully you've had some time to review the application. I know it was submitted some time ago. And in terms of, I defer to the chair, but the first inquiry I'd have is just whether or not there's been any comments received by any planning board or any other town municipalities or boards or members of the public. So you don't have any documents with respect to any comments?
Nothing, I didn't see
Nothing in
anything.
writing.
I have comments, but
Okay.
I didn't distribute them in writing, but I'll submit them for the record.
Would you like to just read it into the record?
I'll let him give his presentation first.
All right, so I defer to Mr. Bolduc at this point.
Thank you all. It's nice to see you again. What we do, well, I'll just get right into it and give you a brief overview. As you know, I'm try to be a man of few words, and then you can hit us with questions. So this rendering, we have to, for tonight's purpose, not show the Cafe Bakery. Well, not discuss the Cafe Bakery, that is not before you. That's in the state of Connecticut, there's a line in between. We just happen to use this one, just also in infield, so people can see how the two sites might work together. That's about it. This is, and I can say this, that at one point that was off the table, and I can now say that it's back on the table very solidly, and we're getting very good vibes from the town. We bought some additional property behind it, which solved a big problem for us with that application. And in fact, several members of the planning board, after we did that and they approved the zone change so we could use it, said that that's now clears the way for many things, so it's a very positive statement. So forgetting that, we would totally rebuild our existing store, which you know is very old and not only looks terrible, it's just a cheap little box that another major oil company put up many years ago, but it's certainly out of style. We would put up, that's real brick, siding, architectural shingles, nice gable, nice window, floor-to-ceiling windows, and most of all, inside would have space to operate and space for our customers to come in and queue up at two much more, in fact three, much more spacious points of sale, which would speed up the outside process also, because right now it's a bottleneck inside, and so they wait in line, which means there's more cars backed up outside. So that's what it would look like. Landscaping and the two sites, if and when each is approved separately, would have been designed so they would then flow together. Again, this is some combined site plan. And obviously, we're not talking about this property tonight, we're simply talking about the Pride property. But there is one change that I should point out to you, and that is that the Pride property has always extended 16 feet beyond the white picket fence that's there now. It's common thinking that the white picket fence is the state line, and in fact, it is not. The state line is 16 feet to the south of the fence, and it's our, in fact, you can see the state line. And all these parcels, in fact, there are several here, are owned partially by the people who own them. Now it's us. Pay taxes to Connecticut and a small part to Massachusetts. This is how it would be developed. The only thing that you care about in this is that if and when that was done, it would take, and the reason for doing this, one of the many reasons, is that it would take pressure off the existing Pride site, because this would be a cafe bakery with a drive-through, which looks very plausible, as I say, and it would take a lot of morning business away, who would then come over here. There's additional parking, and reduce congestion at the existing Pride. Would also give, during the remodel, we would remove the white picket fence that's here and utilize the additional 16 feet for the station itself. The changes, as we said, are a new building, the addition of one island here and an additional canopy, which would have a little cutoff corner so as not to require a variance, because the little tip here extends into the 15-foot setback area. It changes the traffic flow so that while both of these driveways now are both in and out, it would be only in both cases, so that people have no incentive to come in and try and turn around inside and get back out. They'd in fact be prohibited. So customers, one other thing, we've done studies, and the studies show that about 80% of our customers come from Connecticut. And so they come up, they now come in here, turn around here, however, go back out again. Under this plan, they would come up here, have 3 fueling positions, come out here, and then one way or another, we will, even if this doesn't pass, we will utilize this driveway to get them out. So we'll have a nice flow through here and out that way, and the Connecticut customers will barely enter the state, except to spend money, of course. Long Meadow customers, if they're going south to the highway, can enter, very often enter this one, South Ave, come in here and fuel up, and then go back out this way where there's the benefit of a light, wait for the light and continue. Booth Street customers come across, and Long Meadow Street customers can also come up here and in, and similarly go out that way. In terms of traffic, the lights, as you know, there's a light here, and a 4-way light here, and another here, which is a 3-way light. The traffic studies, if you look at them, indicate that they operate now at a level A, B, and C, and not a failure at, not an F at any time. And that's indicative of the fact, the C, in fact, as I learned, I didn't realize this, I always thought a C was pretty bad. Well, C really means how long one has to wait at the light in order to get through. An F meaning that you might have to wait for several light changes to get through. It still works, but it's slower than the traffic people would like it to be. So most of the traffic comes and goes that way, and as in all gas stations, we get our spin-off from it, except for the people who go out of their way to come from Connecticut, but now they would be able to come up and go out that way. All new landscaping, I think that's it. Oh, I'd like to point out also that when we first applied, not this iteration, but previously, it was in 2012. And since that time, I'm sorry to say, bad for us, good for this, that our sales have gone down 25%. And I have the data to show you. And you say, how can that be? Well, first, obviously, it's a public meeting, so it's open to the public. But unless someone asked for it, we'd ask that it be.
No.
Okay. We'd ask that you kind of keep it relatively confidential.
Excuse me, could I ask, is it, where you say down 20% or 25%?
Gas sales, as you'll see in a
Is
minute.
that in gallons or in dollars?
Gallons. We only measure gallons because we know the dollars fluctuate. Oh, okay, so maybe see, okay. So it's down, so without seeing raw numbers, Steve, you can see from here to here. And you say, what happened? Well, it's not that people dislike us, it's 2 things have happened. The first is there are some retailers in Connecticut who have decided to price very aggressively, and so they've taken some business away. Some people don't have the incentive now to come up to us when they can get it for almost as good where they are. That's cost. The second is all our friends, Big Y, have, when they purchased the station in the center of town, the Long Meadow shops, now have that super deal. So if you buy X amount of groceries, you can get a very good price on gas. And while many customers don't go, and so we've lost customers to that because they're able to use their buying power and their big grocery sales to knock something off the price in order to get customers to come in. So between the two, they're down exactly 25%. So that's bad for us, but good for this presentation. So there's significantly less traffic. Did I miss anything, Jim? Oh, you might keep it.
A big improvement over 2011 is you're putting the sidewalk, making a complete connection from Long Meadow to Enfield.
Thank you. Yeah, and there
Where
the
it never
sidewalks pick
existed.
up.
Right. That was a huge problem with the 2011 presentation, is that we didn't have anywhere to
Well,
put pedestrians.
We learned.
Okay.
If Enfield doesn't go through, for whatever reason, would you still be seeking to do everything on the Long
Yes.
Meadow side?
Yeah.
And you would have the traffic flow the
Nothing
same?
will change. The only difference is that part won't be there. We'll sell that off or something. But we're very optimistic.
And do you have a date set?
This would all be 2018. It's certainly too late now to do anything.
I mean, for the hearing in Enfield, for a decision?
We just went through just got the zoning change about 2 weeks ago. And we're going through as you know, it's a long
Months,
process.
maybe?
Several months.
Excuse me, you said if Enfield didn't approve your plan, you'd sell off the property? Wouldn't you have
Well,
to keep the
we-
part on
we-
I mean, nobody's going to buy a
We'd certainly
landlocked.
keep that. We'd
Yeah.
maybe lease it out or something, but you know, they're looking at this from the standpoint that the buildings there are rather ugly. The site is non-conforming, and so they don't have a lot of options. It's too small for anybody else to want. So they don't have a lot of options to it, so they're either gonna look at a closed-up, non-conforming small lot forever, or improve it. They'd like to improve that stretch of their business commercial district. And we would be possibly be a nice catalyst to get something going. So there's every reason for them to want to approve. And Jim and I have been to many meetings there, and we're getting positive vibes now that we have never had before.
Steve, you finished with the presentation? I have a question. Will the curb cuts be directed in like
Oh,
to
yes.
direct the flow and direction?
Everything would be subject to our traffic engineers working with the town traffic engineers to fine-tune all the details. Yeah,
Okay.
and that would be, work through Steve's office and all that, and you could, this is a schematic,
Okay.
and the signage and all would be fine-tuned. It's certainly not the last word here tonight.
The second question is for the record. Did I adequately identify Pride's application when I
Yes.
mentioned the three things?
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you. Steve, you had a letter to read into the record?
Mr. Chairman, I did have some just remarks. So, the three items you identified that were submitted on January 4th was the traffic study. Well, first of all, it was the application, which you had correctly identified, the traffic study, spiral bound, and then there was site plan documents here that were from January. Sorry. And I think they are different than what was presented here tonight. And so I think my remarks, which I'll get to when highlight the discrepancies. So I guess I'll just read it. So the traffic study and associated plans submitted have fundamental flaws that, in my opinion as Director of Planning and Community Development, render the application incomplete. Because the board, this is a public hearing on the materials you received in January, not the stuff that was presented this evening. The most glaring flaw is the disconnect between the bound report from VHB dated 10/21/2016, the full-size plans, also by VHB, dated January 4th, and the Form E application for site plan review, also dated January 4th. All three documents were delivered to the meeting and distributed to the planning board by the applicant at the regularly scheduled planning board meeting of January 4th, 2017. In short, the application, as the chairman mentioned, is for site and design review for Pride Fueling Station with convenience store, proposed remodel includes one additional fueling island, a rebuilt 2,600 square foot store, and redesign of curb cuts. The spiral-bound traffic study from October features the proposed movements with additional work that includes the construction of a cafe bakery on the same site built in Enfield, Connecticut. As Mr. Bullock just demonstrated, the state line bisects the site. The circulation plan, sheet 2 on the spiral-bound report, shows circulation through the site, including by the new pump island, with significant portion of the traffic exiting via the driveway and infield, which I think he just demonstrated with his presentation a few moments ago. The circulation plan, sheet AS4, on the full-size plans also given to us in January, only shows the circulation through the site in Long Meadow and does not include circulation to the proposed pump island. So the lines that go through the site that he was demonstrating don't actually connect to the thing that he's actually applying for in his site and design review application. Additionally, the traffic movements shown on the circulation plan are, at best, counterintuitive in that patrons at existing pumps will be faced with making a very sharp turn to the south to exit, or turning north to exit via South Avenue, even though 85% of vehicles travel south upon leaving the site. So 80% of his customers, as he just suggested, are from Connecticut. The other ones are from Long Meadow, but 85% go south no matter how they entered the site. There is no circulation shown for the new pump island, but it does not appear that a viable circulation option exists for it based on the submission we received. To advance the discussion about any needed improvements or any mitigation requested thereto, the traffic study should have matched the application plans or vice versa. As currently submitted, the study does not conform to the bylaw in that it does not clearly and specifically address the impacts of the proposed project in the application. This is separate and apart from the many other flaws that the town has identified with the traffic study that were to be addressed by the supplemental study that was requested by the town. So I think it's not a question of, the question is this a completed application that we're having a hearing on or not? And that's for the board to decide. I could cite the bylaw requirements for a traffic study and I will, since we're going to be on YouTube in perpetuity here, I will cite the requirements. Yeah, section M, section D. Yeah, right. Yes, a traffic study to include traffic flow patterns within the site, egresses and entrances, loading and unloading areas, and curb cuts on site and within 100 feet of the site. Traffic impact. The projected number of motor vehicle trips to enter or depart from the site shall be estimated for daily hour and peak hour traffic levels. A projected traffic flow pattern for both vehicular and pedestrian access shall be described and related to the site plan, including vehicular movements at all major intersections likely to be affected by the proposed use of the site. Number 4, the impact of this traffic upon existing abutting public and private ways in relation to road capacities. Existing and proposed daily hour and peak hour traffic levels will be given and road capacity levels. As a result of subsections item 1 through 4 above, the planning board may request a plan to implement improvements needed to provide for the free flow of traffic in areas surrounding the site and identified by the planning board as impacted by the proposed uses. So the traffic, the sheets, which only show circulation in Long Meadow and as you can see, don't really go 100 feet off site. If everybody remembers this. AS4, sheet AS4. Do not satisfy those requirements of the bylaw. Now, I think the case could be made that the spiral-bound, thicker VHB report does in fact satisfy that, but that is for a combined bakery, cafe, pump island, station remodel project, the combined project. And as Mr. Bullock said it in his introduction, we're ignoring that part of the application. And so that means that this report isn't valid for does not correlate to the application. So, in my judgment, the application is incomplete. I'll defer to the board.
There's a letter you said you had also, that you received
I
a
just,
comment
it's just
email?
just my statements. I'm happy to give to the clerk for
Okay,
the record.
thank you. Does anyone want to speak in support of Pride's application?
Don?
Is any of the public,
Oh, public?
want to speak in support of the application? What about against the application? Does anyone want to speak against the application? Okay.
If you do,
You have questions?
About the basically it all comes down to traffic flow.
So I guess I
Could you, I'm
guys-
sorry, could you
Yeah.
Sure.
take the place of Attorney Channing and Mr. Bodak? And go to the podium and identify yourself? And where you live? And you're on LCTV, so smile.
And no swearing.
Oh, that might be a stretch there. I'm Cindy Topitzer. I live at 15 Elm Ave.
And I'm Tim Topitzer. I also live at 15 Elm Ave. And we were here back in, was it 2011 now? Was it that long ago?
Yep.
Or-
Okay. How time flies. Basically, I don't have no negative opinion or positive one way or another. We just want to understand the impact of the traffic flow. You know, at the time, in 2011, I believe the police chief also attended, and there was issues of fistfights. And the big thing was people pulling in on South Ave and then coming the opposite way, and then, you know, they were both fighting for the same pumps, and it was getting ugly. And I can agree with Bob's assessment that, you know, visually, I can see the traffic is down there over the last 4 or 5 years. I thought it just because prices dropped so low, people weren't freaking out at the price and just going to any place local rather than all flocking here from Connecticut. But basically, in a nutshell, we just want to understand how the traffic is going to flow. It's an awkward intersection to begin with, and there's lots of issues with accidents on that strip. Yes, sir.
I think I can answer your question. It's going to take about 20 seconds, but I should be able to do it. Pride assessment, which is the spiral document that Mr. Bolduc showed, uses ITE data. ITE data is, let's see if I've got it right. Bruce, what's ITE data?
International
ITE?
Traffic Engineer.
Thank you.
Engineers.
On page 24, about halfway down, in here, the assessment states, the fact that this particular fueling facility generates almost twice as much traffic as ITE suggests it should.
Mhm.
And so the numbers that are given are approximately, for ITE data, approximately almost twice as much should be the correct numbers. And if we go through that assessment, on page 39, about 2/3 of the way down, it says the proposed redevelopment is anticipated to generate 1,070 new daily trips. So if we roughly double that, you're looking at over 2,000 daily trips. Where Mr. Bolduc said 80% roughly go to the south, that means 20% go to the north. So exiting, you've got roughly 200 new people coming to the site. I don't know how many will be entering the gas station, because we can't tell from the study, because the study is directed to flow that's going to come in for the gas station and convenience stores. I don't know how many are going to come from the north. I don't know how many are going to come from the south. So I can't answer specifically, but I suspect it's around 200 extra per day. A little longer than 20 seconds, but does that answer your question?
As by the volume, but we really want to understand how it flows, because it currently just doesn't flow well. People come out of South Ave, they come out onto Route 5 South, there's lots of issues. They come through the old bike place now, or the old Donut Delight, depending on how old you are.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So, I'm sorry, from a
That's great.
strictly a planning standpoint, the answer is we don't know, because we don't have a study that
Right.
shows what's actually being applied for just by itself. And so everything else is kind of, I mean, based on the combined project we saw, it's a huge number. And like I said, we feel issues associated with how they've kind of projected things, but it's really irrelevant, because what he's looking for, what he's applying for is just a Long Meadow project, and we don't have a study that tells us the answer to that question.
Okay.
And we don't know what
Mr.
portion of the numbers are going to go into the gas station, what portion are going into the bakery. We have no clue.
We
Mr.
live,
Chair. Yeah.
we live on Elm Ave, so if you're heading into Long Meadow, it's the very first street on the right-hand side. It's not that far from the gas
On the
station
right,
at all.
yeah.
And, the traffic, if I'm coming from Enfield, it's a nightmare to get through there, because you have people that, are trying to get into the gas station, and they pull up to the light, and then they wait, there's just no good way to get there. And, it really ties up the traffic and everything, so I can't envision how it's gonna work with more traffic unless somebody can come up with a good pattern to enter the facility and a good pattern to exit the facility. And I think at the last meeting, there was a lot of talk about that. And I guess I'm also wondering, I thought that this whole project was gonna take place a couple of years ago, so I'm wondering what had transpired in the meantime and why it hasn't.
The proposal, was back in 2011, 2012, whenever it was.
Right.
It was withdrawn and was just
Okay.
filed again this year.
Okay,
Okay.
well, that makes sense.
So that's the simple explanation.
Okay, no,
Cool.
that's fine.
Yeah, again, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to understand the traffic flow to make sure it doesn't get worse. I actually have gotten to the point now that I get off the highway, I go down Willard Ave and come up over Roy Street just to avoid the whole
Excuse me, but what
strip.
time of day are you doing this at? Yeah, all day long, or just specific times?
I notice it in the morning going to work, I'll notice it coming home. During the middle of the day, it doesn't seem to be too bad, but, 7 to 9:30 and anywhere from 4 to 7, And then, of course, whenever the highway screws up at the Forest Park curve, then you always know, because Route 5, they'll dump onto Route 5 pretty quick going north, and that can tie it up, but.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Do you, when you're saying the intersection has a lot of problems, is it your experience that cars are waiting to turn left when they're coming towards Long Meadow?
Yeah,
And people are going into
exactly.
the wrong lane near your
So, and you
street?
can't be in the right lane
Right,
there
because
if you're
that
going
goes-
straight. So you're waiting for somebody, and that light is really funny, because it's a very wide intersection there, because you have people, if you're looking at it from heading towards Long Meadow, on the right, there's, is it Booth Road? And it's up above, up to the right-hand side, and then South Ave is like this. So you have an intersection that's not a real intersection, and, it just doesn't flow. So you can't be in the right-hand lane unless you're gonna go down Booth Road. And for me to do that, sometimes I do, but I have to drive around Roy Street and, go down Booth and go around Roy Street and then loop back on my road. And it's kind of a pain in the neck to do it, because I could just go straight, take a right, and I'm basically there,
But 3/4 of the cars lining up at the intersection don't put their blinking on until they're right there. They
yeah.
don't give you any warning that,
Yeah.
I'm not really going through the light, I'm
Right.
going into Pride.
And the light is really funny, because you can be half, just like at the intersection, and if that light turns yellow, it inevitably, like if you try to walk, and I do sometimes, I'll walk down to get milk or something, and cars go through that light constantly. I mean, it's, you can count almost every time, there's 3 or 4 cars that go through the red light. And it's, when my kids were younger, I was like, don't cross there, don't cross there. I'll help you cross up further. And in fact, that light when you walk, I actually called the police department about it once or twice, because when I was coming back from the Pride Station, I pressed the walk button no less than 6 times, and I never got the walk. And I came back and I called the police station. I'm like, what is with that? I got the walk, sign when I crossed to go there, but not when I was coming back. So I finally just walked down Long Meadow Street over to Mass Ave, and then I crossed that way. But it's a really difficult intersection, and I'm just concerned about adding more traffic. And I don't mean this in a bad way,
No,
Mr.
if they could
Volbeck, at all,
resolve it.
but I actually, I don't go to the gas station anymore because I just couldn't deal with the traffic. But that's just me. Tim still goes there.
She's part of the 25%, Bob.
And it's not, just to let you know, it's not because of the big Y thing, because that doesn't save me any money either.
So that's it, that's all we got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bolduc or Mr. Channing, do you want to say something in rebuttal?
One of the questions the question was people waiting to, they're going north to get into the station. Right. Into the station. I'm there a lot also, and I don't know how many of you do, but incidentally, I would suggest a site visit at any time of the day. You pick it, or multiple site visits, with or without me, and just observe it for yourself. The busy times, of course, are in our business are the travel times in the morning from 7 to 9, the lunch period, and then again what we call the going home time from 4 to 6:30 at night. And you could go there any day of the week and just park anywhere there and watch and observe for yourself, and I think you'd see. On Saturday, it's usually about 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 to 12 is when it hits its peak. So, it was, and one of the questions in some of the other times we met were, would it be possible to have a bypass lane here to where customers from Connecticut could come up and wait here and then turn in? Well, the traffic engineers looked at that, and what they concluded was, if you took this lane and you made it into a left-only lane, then you'd have to have, if you still want the right turn only onto Boot, and you still want it to flow through, then you have to shift everything this way. And then once you get, now this one is over here, or this flow through is over here, and you're gonna end up taking some property along the nice tree belt there. And that would be a question for the town. The second real problem, even greater than that, is that once you get into changing lanes in Connecticut, you run into a totally different set of regulations, both town and state, that are onerous, and in fact would preclude you from doing that, because they have certain regs which say you can't do that within certain distances from an intersection and all kinds of stuff.
What, no, seriously, about, like what is Connecticut?
It's Connecticut DOT. We were told by a traffic engineer that there are, and I'm not the expert, Jim may have some clear, but we'd be happy to get to that, all the reasons why it won't work. And we talked to a Connecticut traffic engineer about it. I won't say we did, but VHB did, because we asked them to study it at one point after some of our previous discussions over the years.
I think the idea was that actually the Booth Street dedicated lane would be abolished and would be, now, just straight, if you want to turn to Booth Street, fine. And that would be where the dedicated turn into your station would
Well,
come
I can
from.
tell you at the some of the Connecticut meetings that we've had in Enfield, the Booth Street residents are very, they speak their mind, and they're not happy with it at all. And,
a change or the way it is now?
well, they think they have to wait too long to get out on Booth Street. And, you know, it's kind of hard to tell them that, well, you're going out onto a busy street and that's why there's a light there, so you can get out and you have to wait your turn. They seem to think they should just be able to pull up. One of the things that they've objected to is that when they're coming around here, there currently are customers from Pride exiting here, and they have to worry about hitting.
Sure, I have photos.
This plan where we only have inlets here solves that problem. The other is, in my observations, and I'm there probably more than all of you put together, is that I never see people back. I see people waiting here, but they're waiting for the light. They're not waiting to get into Pride. And I think the common observation is, oh, they're waiting to get into Pride. Well, they're not. If they want to get into Pride, one, many of them come in, this is always an easy turn to get in, because there's plenty of Blakes in the traffic coming this way. So they always come in this way, and they don't even care that there's a light there. And now, especially because we've opened this up, they go out that way, and they're perfectly happy, and there's no more waits anymore. The other is, that's one of the reasons for this additional island, is so that instead of them having to get in here and finding cars backed up at these four, there's another place to park, to pull up and fuel, and so there's two more positions available to them, and that adds a major improvement to them not having, even if they did have to wait, not having to wait because now they have some place to go.
Bob, maybe you're doing it backwards, because that's exactly, I spent literally a week and a half every other day the last week and a half. I live next door to your station, so I've been down there. I've myriad of photographs, video. Everything he's saying is correct, but the main problem is that what I noticed is when the light was red for traffic going north, 3 cars, and generally he's right, a lot of cars don't really turn in there. That's not the hang-up at the intersection. It's just, it's the volume of traffic. And I will say the study from 2011 and 2016 are pretty much agree. The traffic counts, the actual physical counts that were done by human beings actually do concur, and they actually show an increase in volume over the 2011-2016. But my point is, what I saw was really weird, what would be repetitive is what you just said. When the light is red going north, and they know the Longmeadow traffic isn't going south, I would see 2 or 3 cars dash into the center lane, the first entrance in Longmeadow, and I'd see cars coming out of Booth Street taking a left, and it's blind to them, and all of a sudden they're coming out, and they rush because they know they have to beat the light. The light's very, very fast. They come out really quickly, and bingo, I could see a head-on collision several times right in that area there. So my question is, why wouldn't traffic going north enter in down by the bakery and then circulate outward onto Longmeadow Street? Just do the whole reverse pattern of what you have planned. See, this is what's weird, is there's so much, the Booth Street is a busy intersection.
If you have them coming out here, you're still going to have this possible effect here. of
But they
them
see
coming
that,
out
but they're
and then
yielding to
coming
that. They see that happening.
Yeah.
What's happening is,
Well-
people are dashing for an opportunity to find one of your locations to fuel. And I do agree, your extra fuel station would actually would make it more convenient. Now I believe in that. The problem with your station is internal. It's not the flow. The Longmeadow Street, Enfield Street is really what we call in our regional planning, is a corridor problem.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's Enfield, and it's why I don't think Enfield's been able to develop that part of Enfield very well. I think it's a traffic cluster mess. But because Booth Street, as your traffic studies show, the biggest flow of traffic really is northbound, southbound, at peak hours, and the Booth Street thing. So to try to keep, egress and ingress out away from that major flows.
We would be very happy to reverse this at any point. It's easy, it's just a matter of signage. So we could try it this way, see how it works. We could try it that way. It's simple.
Yeah, well, it is
Reverse
internal.
design. And we're very happy to,
Wait.
we want it
Yeah.
to work too. But one thing I'd like to say here is that everyone looks like, oh, you know, Pride, you're gonna mess this thing. Well, I'll tell you, it's Pride's reputation. We're saying this will work. The last thing we want is to build something that doesn't work and then lose customers. And our experience says this would work. We've done a lot of them. And our traffic engineers and Pride, when we get it together, are probably some of the best knowledge of traffic flow of anybody. And we're very happy to try both ways for 6 months, which is something that you're doing it now in front of the library, where you've made one way in front of the community house, an experiment where it's only one way, and if it works, I suspect you'll make it permanent. And traffic tests like that are now quite common. They're doing it at the Rotary in East Long Meadow, too. They blocked off one lane.
Well, I don't think
Hold on.
that's for traffic.
Hold on, Mr. Chair, then, Mr. Chair.
One at a time. Steve?
I just want to, I mean, Walter, I appreciate what you're saying, but I just want to remind the board that the hearing is about an application that's been submitted.
We have several, that's the problem, and my next point
But
was
no,
gonna be
the one
that
the
we-
one he gave us on January 4th.
Right, is for just a remodel.
And
a-
it's not necessarily 100% consistent with what he's saying now,
Okay.
and it's not,
So why
it
don't we-
wasn't written in pencil, and that's, I think the point is,
So why don't we ask the applicant to maybe continue this hearing and get all on the same page and
That would
go
be fine.
forward? I think what our hangup here was requesting another traffic study. I'm now convinced another traffic study I would vote against at this point, because it's not the traffic. It's an internal circulation problem. I think the applicant needs to decide exactly what he wants to do and come back before us with the final plan and all papers in order. And then we can then have a peer review by our engineers
We're
and
happy to
whatever.
do that.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that's just my comment.
I think the point of having a traffic study, it would be, I mean, traffic studies aren't just the road, the public way. They also deal with the circulation within within property, and its effect on the road itself.
Correct.
So I actually draw the opposite conclusion, that we do need a traffic study which would deal with the specific issues of where should this be only ingoing, should this
Right.
only be outgoing?
Well, that's correct,
Should
but
this be
it's-
both? And that is in large measure what the board was trying to get last winter, which
Well,
we never
that
got.
would be
One at a time, please.
Yes, but short.
One at a time.
Short, though, of I would say, of having a physical, human beings going out and counting. I think that data would be reliable.
I don't think so, because earlier in the study, it says the IT data is approximately half of what our true traffic flow is.
Correct. But the
So
physical
if we
counts.
if we have 1,070 that are supposedly coming in, and there's, according to the Pride assessment, that there's no impact on South Street and on North Flow or on Booth Street, any significant effect, well, that might be for the 1,070, and it doesn't deal with the 2,000. 2,000 is a
Where are we
large
getting
number,
2,000 from, Don?
because
There is
their
no
numbers
2,000
are
figure
one
in here.
half of what actually, the IT numbers are one half of what shows up at the station. And a couple of things, the numbers that we have, we don't know how much are for what portion of those numbers go into the cafe, the proposed cafe, what portion goes into the gas station. That's what a traffic study would show, that would be commissioned by Long Meadow, as we normally do, but paid for by the applicant, in order to tell us what impact there would be on the surrounding areas and what kind of traffic improvements would be proposed in order to correct that. And then at that point, just as we had with CVS, the Long Meadow Shops, then there's a share paid for by the applicant, and the town pays the rest. You need to figure out what that traffic flow is going to be and what the impact is. And that's not dealt with sufficiently in this report.
We were told that we needed a traffic study, and we in fact provided one, like VHB, the very firm that the town uses, so it's not like it's some unprofessional company. Finesse Hagen Brooklyn is in fact the same firm that the town uses, and they did a traffic, and it's in front of you, dated 2016. And people say, well, we want a traffic study, but we did.
So, I guess, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think, good segue, because we're bringing us back to center where
Yeah.
we're supposed to be with the public hearing, which is, we're having a public hearing, or you all are having a public hearing on an application submitted. And there is a traffic study, but not for the application. It is not a traffic study for the thing that was applied for. And I mean, that's a fact.
That's true.
It's a fact. You pointed out, that night in January, Walter. The Bakery Cafe is on every page.
Right.
And we're told to ignore the Bakery Cafe. And so the guts of the report that are supposed to address all of these things we've been talking about are not related to what was applied for. And is it up to the planning board to decide, well, how do we prorate it? Do we take a share? How do we carve out? That isn't, in fact, the job of the planning board. That's what a supplemental study could do. And so, the public hearing is about, do we have a completed about an application that, is it completed or not?
Okay.
I could, we're happy to continue this. We're not pressing for some answer tonight. In fact, we're only here because you set up the meeting. We didn't ask for it. We are happy
At
to
this point.
continue working with the town of Enfield so that we would have some definitiveness there, and then meet and talk again, and then the traffic study which we've provided, which is for the Pride remodel and the Cafe Bakery, would in fact be appropriate. Then you can critique that. But there's no question, we do have a chicken or the egg thing, and that's why when we were having trouble with that last time, we took that one off the table, but left the worst case report, which was both. So-
Under our bylaws, we have two things that we can do, even the 2011 bylaws, not the 2015. The board can do three things: accept the application, approve the application, deny the application is incomplete. Don't have any ability to continue it. We can, and
We could
if
ask
you
for continuance, could we not?
You withdraw.
withdraw the application. One problem we have with this is a lot of your application depends upon what's going to happen in Enfield. If Enfield doesn't make any changes to that northbound lane, it's all messed up.
Well, our experts tell us they will not make changes, that there will not be any changes in northbound lane. And that comes from a Connecticut traffic engineer.
So that's a good idea, why don't you withdraw and then just reapply like at our next meeting, October 4th? I mean, if you're assuming everything is we're gonna ask for all this to be consolidated and be accurate, and we will wanna do a peer review of the traffic study, but why don't, it's semantics, it could be
I
a
understand.
two-week thing.
Well, I'm gonna turn that one over to Jim.
I'm only saying that because, I mean,
You're right.
there's positive vibrations here in some respects, but
we-
it's gotta flow.
We thought we were done with this, and we were in fact surprised when you scheduled a hearing tonight.
Okay.
We only came here because you asked us to come. We're not pushing an answer for now. We feel the courts through the other process may very well resolve it. We thought we could resolve it tonight, or even, we're happy to get with a working committee from with Mr. Crane and people from the town, whatever, traffic engineers, police and all that, which we had started. We're happy to do that also, and continue the discussion and the working out, and have our traffic engineer there, and have him do whatever additional analyses that the committee would agree to, or would want. And we can keep it going that way, and we're happy to do that. We want to cooperate, we want to work it out.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Maybe we'll close, can you close the public hearing? Well, I guess I've heard that before. I just want to offer that for the record, that I have heard that before. Some time ago.
Really,
I would say this, we had some meetings, and then it was impossible to get the group together again. Not on our fault. We asked for them. We didn't get return phone calls, all that. I don't think we all want to get into that, but I don't think that should be blamed on us. in one day.
Well, it wasn't, I understand, there was a lot going on in this town, unfortunately, in terms of infrastructure development and
Do you have
town
a copy
meeting.
of the zoning
I
bylaws?
think, in fairness,
We're willing to
I do
spread that
think
kind
that,
of-
yeah, I mean, we need to continue this on, to its fruition.
Well,
My understanding is we didn't have any tonight.
I'm sorry?
That this was just for the public to speak tonight, we weren't planning on voting on anything.
Did we post, I don't.
We did not post a
We did
regular
not post it
meeting.
as a meeting, so we couldn't vote tonight in any event.
Yeah.
My concern is the application is incomplete because it doesn't include an appropriate traffic impact study as to what's going to happen with the extra traffic flow, how much is going to go into the gas station. We have something that deals with the cafe and the gas station. This application before us is only for the gas station. That's the portion that's in Long Meadow.
Can an applicant amend the application then? And if he feels like withdrawal is a scary prospect, would you want to amend the application?
So, if I
But, I
could have
mean,
a-
you guys have to legally consider this thing open and not a constructive approval at this point. I mean, it's in your court, literally.
So we filed an application.
Right.
And there's certain bylaws and regulations which say what has to be in the content of a plan. And that includes on page 59 of traffic study, I think Stephen, or Town Manager Crane, read the requirements. And so the question then before you is whether or not the traffic study we presented includes everything there. And the second question I know Mr. Crane pointed out is that the traffic study and the recommendations by VHB are not consistent with what we applied for, the site plan before you. And the question is whether or not these recommendations or the suggested mitigated measures by VHB are to be incorporated into the site plan. And so whether or not they're not consistent, it's whether or not they are to be incorporated. Then the second question that the town has the right to do under 53G is to have the assistance of a peer or a traffic engineer assist you in reviewing this traffic impact statement to determine what, if any, additional information needs as it's related to the bylaw. And the bylaw clearly says under M, what's required, and then under your consideration on page 63, again, the review criteria, design guidelines, whether or not it meets all those A through H, and then it goes 1 through 4. So the question again is whether or not this incorporates what's required. Maybe it may be superfluous with respect to the cafe bakery, but I think it meets the minimum requirements of the traffic requirements. Again,
Jim,
we've
how,
done-
excuse me, how does it?
Excuse me, under page 61, if you turn to it, it lists the only thing that the planning board can decide. It says, first off, we can approve the site plan, deny the site plan, approve the site plan subject to conditions, modifications, and reasonable restrictions. That's it. So, we have to make that within a certain time period.
Once it's
And,
deemed a complete application.
well, we've had the hearing.
Well, we've
After
already had the
hearing,
hearing.
we have a hearing. And so, we have to render a decision based upon what's in front of us.
Right, within 90 days of this public.
Actually, I think it's
60 days,
65.
I'm sorry, there is a
You've got the,
And we have to render that decision.
Mr. Chair, yes, back to his question. As a complete application, the reason we didn't accept it as a complete application is that you submitted a traffic study, but it's for a completely different scenario than with the actual site plans that are presented as a market remodel. See, that's where we have a disconnect, and I think as a working process, you would have somehow flowed, at least amended this or decided to revise this just to show what could be realistic with the new Pride remodel, eliminating the bakery. Or you would have said like tonight, hey, the bakery is on and we're going to give you new site plans showing the flow, at least with the bakery. You don't have to show the Connecticut side, but you would show the bakery. See, I think that's the miscommunication here, is there's a disconnect between the applicant and our board, is that we have two sets of plans for two separate events here going on, so.
But this,
Yeah.
the traffic can be bifurcated. I mean, this traffic report may
Right.
include too much information, but it includes, at least the only question before you at this point is whether or not it includes enough information that's required, and it does.
It doesn't, because
It
it doesn't
doesn't.
tell us what
It
traffic
shows too
flow
much
is
traffic.
going in,
It depends on
into
traffic
and
flow
from,
out of
and where from the
entrances
gas
don't
station.
exist.
Sure does. Page 21 starts with proposed site-generated traffic volumes, and it bifurcates between, I don't want to get into the debate now, because the question more is just where we go from here. And I think where we go from here, then there's a number of things. It's whether or not you need to close the public hearing or act on it, or you can allow or request additional information. I don't think there's,
Or we can approve the site design subject to conditions, modifications, and restrictions.
But we're not voting on any kind of acceptance.
Not necessarily.
Well, no, we can't.
Can't,
We don't-
we can't.
We vote at a regular meeting, we aren't
You're
posted
correct.
for a regular meeting.
Okay,
May I
So
ask a
then-
question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead, Steve.
So, I mean, I'll reserve comment on whether or not I believe this is an internal circulation or external circulation. Obviously, but just in terms of the internal circulation issue, your full-size plan and the plan in your spiral-bound study are completely different.
Correct. I concur with Mr. Crane.
there's no, and
So,
I'm not going to
I guess
disagree
my
with
question
that.
would be, which is it?
Depends on whether or not the town's planning board's in a position to adopt the recommendations of
No, what
VHB.
are you applying for? It's your application, which one are you applying for?
We're applying for what was submitted and then supplemented by the request of the VHB. We're not going to get into VHB's recommended mitigation measures. If you feel it's
No, no,
appropriate,
just- You're
you
having a
adopt them.
public hearing on a submitted application. This was a part of the submission materials along with this. The circulation plans are different.
For a remodel.
Which one is it?
Remodel and the
It's for the three things that are listed in the application.
I just would point out for the board that the circulation plans are different in the two studies.
Okay.
Well, this,
Which is the key, Walter, to your point,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fairly
That-
key
that is key.
piece of information.
All I was saying earlier is just, I'm only defending the actual people out there measuring the traffic, which cars turn left, where they went right. I'm not defending whether the internal circulation plan is flawed, I agree. But I do believe the flow on Long Meadow Street is as accurate as it shows. And I will say that the applicant is correct that during peak rush hour, there are fewer cars causing trouble turning into the gas station. That's all I'm going to say. But the rest of it,
Right.
I agree. We have a plan, again, as I said, a traffic study that covers a bakery that does not exist on the site plan part of the application, which is a remodel. So we need to bring it all together into one.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add something. Our application before you is to remodel the store building, add an island, and change the driveway flows to all internal, flowing in only on the two intersections. The application shows, for discussion purposes, which way the traffic might flow inside, but that is not necessarily part of our application. It's shown here for discussion purposes, and I started off by saying this is not what we're applying. The sketches I showed you tonight are not what we're applying for tonight. We're applying for what's before you. I only showed you those because that's the latest iteration of how, if and when the Cafe Bakery comes about, it might flow. But we're happy to change it at any point. The application, if and when the application is approved, and we do it, it can be subject to condition that you can change the traffic flow, or you can have a traffic engineer change it any way you want at any time as an experiment until we all find the right one. We're happy to work with you. We just need to get started to do it and build it, but the fundamentals of remodeling the building, adding the canopy, the other island, and changing the traffic flow in are all we're asking for. You can change it along the way. We don't care. We want one that works the best also. Then we can take our joint happiness in the fact that we did a joint effort here.
So I think the question before the board is, how do we determine what the best way is? And so there's a way of either, under 52G, you ordering a peer review critique of what was submitted, or you requesting, again, you don't have the obligation to, but you can certainly request that we supplement a traffic report which indicates two circulations, meaning in and out, and maybe eliminates the Cafe Bakery if necessary as well. I mean, you can certainly make that request upon us and make it an opportunity for us to provide that information if we so choose, and then continue on with the public hearing. I think there also is an obligation under the bylaws to hold an on-site visit. And so obviously we invite that and look forward to that in the coming near future,
I don't
hopefully
think
as
there's
well.
any obligation to hold it, but I mean, I've done that, we've done that in the past, and, you know, it is a courtesy to the applicant to see the site.
I think the issues have been crystallized. It's a matter of issuing a ruling at a upcoming planning board meeting as to what we do. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
You'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing. Thank you.
Before you vote on that, I think that there is an obligation to have a viewing of the property.
Yeah, it says
Oh.
it somewhere in there.
Well, we're considering this application still in process at the moment until our next meeting, and yes.
But
I
we
mean, this
think,
is, we're just not,
don't
this is
think-
making a motion not to continue.
I don't
the
think you need to
public
go to the site to determine if the paperwork you have in front of you is complete or not.
I think we read somewhere that a site visit is part of this process.
hearing. No.
It's
So it
certainly
might-
not
it might be a
required,
process.
but also, this is one of the most well-known sites, and I mean,
Well, it is and it isn't. There are a lot of
I
myths. There are a lot of
visited the
myths
site,
about
Bob,
it,
so
and that's
I
the
can,
problem.
I'll be happy to contribute in the future with my observations of your site.
But one other thing we could do is we have a video that we'd be happy to show you you can have a whole week's worth, you can have 2 weeks' worth, and you can fast forward it to all the busy times. So from the comfort of your office, you can see
Right. But,
everything
Mr. Chair,
and
again,
decide if there are any traffic problems.
it's internal circulation. I've
That's
already
what
said,
this would show.
I've agreed with the traffic counts, the people, the cars turning left, the cars turning right, going straight at peak hours. I have no problem with that. It's just how they're dashing into your place, how they're going the wrong direction, how they're then dashing out at various things. It's almost like a shotgun effect, how they blast their way out. And I did count, your average turnaround of vehicles is under 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, so
Yeah.
it's fast. You have the fastest fuel pumps, that is a known fact, and you can put traffic through there very quickly.
Yeah.
But it's an internal circulation problem.
Right.
That, and as you just said, regardless of, this is not definitive because you just said it's a work in process. We need to explore what really works and what doesn't work. So again, back to the complete application. It's-
I mean, I guess it's
That's so fun.
a work in progress, but aren't you supposed to apply for something that you want? I mean, I'm.
Right, I know, I agree.
No, but it's always been.
It should be one or the other. It should be the Pride remodel or the Pride Cafe Bakery. I mean, you can't
well,
take the best of each.
We were in the process of doing that, and
Okay.
you called this hearing. We didn't ask to come tonight.
But I think, there's standalone applications. I
So-
think if we can get into semantics, if you ask what's before you, whether or not you could approve it, not saying you will, I think you could. The question is whether or not it's the best and whether or not there can be improvements, I guess, is where we stand today. And you obviously can take whatever action. If you want to close the public hearing, you can. I still think there's an obligation to hold a viewing on site, and you obviously have the
So
opportunity.
what would that, how's the relevance of that to a public hearing?
I just like to
On-site.
comply with the rules, that's all I'm asking.
It has nothing to do with a public hearing. Public hearing is just is a required portion of the whole site and design review process, so. You can have you can have an inspection afterwards because we haven't come to a vote for, against, or with modifications, so, I mean, there's still.
well, I disagree that it's a required element.
No, but I mean,
process.
again, it's a
I mean,
courtesy.
often people will go out and look at it, but the other thing, which I guess since Walter repeated himself, I'll repeat myself. The issue of like internal circulation versus like the traffic going in and out of public ways. In one sense, if, 10 people could be killed in traffic accidents in your parking lot every week, and it wouldn't necessarily be the concern of the planning board, except that if it then screwed up the traffic on the streets, it would be our concern. So, to take an extreme,
Yeah, that is
ridiculous
extreme.
example. But, I mean, even your presentation says, well, we're going to be improving the traffic on the street because we're changing this to, like, the internal will come here and here. So, I mean, even your presentation admits that the internal traffic flow affects the traffic on the public way. So, I mean, I think you can't say, well, this is just internal to the gas station.
You know, I mean, it clearly has an effect on the traffic on the adjoining
Oh, I
streets.
agree with this, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's all
I'm gonna be scratching my head all night. I heard Mr. Channing suggest that he could, submit a revised circulation plan that does not include the bakery cafe.
That could be something that you
Right.
request or suggest, yes.
But I'm looking at it, dated January 3rd, 2017, stamped by a civil engineer. I'm looking right now that was given to us on January 4th, a circulation plan that does not include the bakery cafe, nor does it include circulation to what is actually being applied for, and I'm confused as to why we're going around and around about, there's just, there's not a, there's
And
not
by
a-
the same firm that did the traffic study.
Right, by VH, there's just from a strictly planning and data, there's just not consistent information that is the grounds for making, I think, a decision. It is incomplete. I'm sorry, I guess,
Make this decision, but it's not, it's complete.
Tell them if you want to, tell us if we'll do it.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I
sorry,
think,
go
I
ahead.
think everybody's had their say, if I've got it correct. And unless someone else wants to bring up a new point. Okay. I think then that.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it, or whatever.
All right, let's take a vote. Members, identify yourselves and vote yea or nay.
No.
Ken Taylor? Nay.
Bob, Yea or nay?
Nay to have what?
It's a vote to
Close the public
close
hearing.
the public hearing.
Close the
Has-
public hearing, yes,
Hearing.
yes.
Okay. Close it.
Sorry.
Aye, to close the hearing. Don Holland.
Bruce Colton, aye, to close the public hearing.
Walter Gunn, aye, to close the public hearing.
Heather Lepore, aye. To close public hearing.
Thank you for coming, everybody. The public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
No, you-
Okay.